Welcome to the show, Mr. Dennis Stroop. What's going on?
Hey Felipe, how you doing?
I'm good, man.
Good, 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 good.
Oh, I like the nature shot.
Yeah, I thought we'd set up in the backyard this morning. It's not too terrible hot just yet, so give it a few minutes.
Perfect.
My only caveat is, yeah, I'm not back here with the dogs, so I'm gonna try and keep everybody, calm with a couple of snaps every now and again. So I'll just make my disclosure for that.
Half of my guests have had dogs that have been on the show, so it's totally cool.
Okay,
It's a
great.
dog. The audience is dog friendly. So,
Yeah, okay, good deal.
yeah.
Yeah, I have found that. That's another interesting thing, Felipe, is as we've learned in this new work from home environment. I think initially there was a strong desire to make sure that we kept the kids and the dogs and everything else about our typical lives kind of behind the curtain.
Yeah.
What we learned is that, I see that you're, in your home there, you're comfortable, you've got a nice arrangement, that's nice. I'm learning something about you. I think is as part of this situation, one of the things that's been really enlightening is we're developing more empathy, in my opinion, because we get to know and learn about each other a little bit more. And I think that's of a benefit as humans. If we can't be physically together as we typically are, at least we're maybe learning a little bit more about each other in this way.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's what drew me to you, like right out the gate. We were on the call, and because you had your camera on, I had my camera on. You weren't even talking. Other people were talking, and I saw you reacting to what they were saying. And I was like, Dennis is a guy that I need to know well. And it pulled, but if we never would have had cameras on, I never would have even knew you existed.
Yeah,
We never would have met and talked. And I think we have lots of things in common.
I think so too. And thank you again for this opportunity, Felipe. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. Any chance we get to dish and see inside the mind of a designer is always great. The audience response has been phenomenally large. You're helping to encourage new people and also keep the people in because they know they
Good.
could get a chance to work with Dennis. Like I know I want to work with you, like the first chance I get. Welcome to the EBFC show, the easier, better for construction podcast. I'm your host, Felipe Engineer Manriquez. This show is all about the business of construction. Today's episode is sponsored by the Lean Construction Institute. LCI is working to lead the building industry in transforming its practices and culture. Its vision is to create a healthy and thriving industry that delivers outstanding project outcomes every time for everyone. Join me and many others from the Lean Design and Construction community at their 22nd Annual Congress. It is being held virtually this year, the week of October 19th. Our theme is the ABCs of Lean, transformation through actions, best practices, and coaching. Register at www.lcicongress.org/2020. Check the show notes for more information. Thank you, LCI. Now, to the show.
Good. How are you today?
Man, I am doing fantastic, Dennis. Thank you for asking.
Yeah.
Now, let's not skip the pleasantries. Doing really well. Started my day super early. I'm doing a Scrum product owner certification this morning with Scrum Inc.
Mhm.
And I'm getting it's like the last certification I could get. And I've checked, I got them all. The only thing missing is for me to actually do it all.
Right. Yes. You're going to have to get that additional business card to fit all the acronyms there after
Yes.
your name.
How about you? How's your morning going?
So far, so good. Fridays, these days, we're on summer hours. And so we try to do our 4-9 and a 4 on a Friday situation. And so usually I've got some project specific things stacked up for me on a Friday morning. And then it's kind of wrap up from this week and already looking forward to next week for me for Friday. So starting to plan ahead for next week, thinking about what's coming up.
No, that is good. I just heard from a guy that I follow on YouTube, and he recommends that people plan the next week like on Sunday night
Hmm.
or the last work day. And I thought, wow, man, I've been missing out. I have not done that. I usually spend a good chunk of my time planning on Monday morning. And
Hmm. Yeah.
it's great to hear an architect planning the
Oh,
work week. Man, that's just like music to general contractors' ears, Dennis.
I'll bet. Yeah, no, yeah, that's definitely something that we have a good acumen for. I think that I run in a crowd that's really vested in thinking about what it means to not just be reactive, but to be proactive, and try and be able to be out in front of things. So
Oh, that's great.
definitely. I know we're already engaged. Our organizations are engaged in work right now. Some of what I think I want to be talking about is a great story with
Sure.
regard to the engagement that HGA has with McCarthy. So
Welcome, Dennis Stroop, to the podcast. Super glad to have you on. Why don't you go ahead and tell the audience a little something about yourself?
absolutely, Felipe, and thank you again for this opportunity. Well, as you mentioned, my name is Denis Stroop. I am a healthcare principal with HGA, Architects and Engineers. I work out of our Sacramento office. One of my other roles within HGA is I am also the practice group leader for healthcare here in Sacramento as well. My experience has been 25 years in architecture. The last 15 or so have been solely in acute healthcare in California, so OSHPD work predominantly. In the last 10 years, I've been more and more deeply involved in an integrated and lean practices and delivering projects. That's also seen my involvement in the Lean Construction Institute. First as a consumer, and then later as a contributor. I'm on my second lap right now with the core group for Northern California in our community of practice here. And I also co-chair training for LCI here in Northern California.
Very cool. Yeah, I'm also a big LCI consumer and volunteer. So it's good. There's the first thing we have in common right away.
Yes.
How long ago would you say you discovered this whole idea of lean?
Wow, my entry point into Lean was on a project that I was on. It was a significant hospital expansion for a private community hospital, actually up here in Placerville. It's Marshall Hospital. They were doing their North Wing addition. And we were engaged with a mechanical engineer, capital engineering, Brian Johnson specifically, who actually at the time was he was the chair of the Northern California COP for LCI. And big kickoff meeting, we were getting things going, and he introduced the concept of the last planner system. And the goal was to try and understand where we were going to be ready for steel procurement. And it was so enlightening for me. And just that simple kind of just flipping scheduling as traditionally we understood it, which was a very push kind of a system into this is our preferred date in order to erect. And if we need X time to, and it really began to lay bare sort of the steps that we needed and all the integration points. Those two things were really the key for me in my introduction into Lean. There's another way to think about it, number one. And number two, it's so much bigger than just yourself, and it's more robust when it involves, the entire team participating. And that's something that really just struck a chord with me. So that was my entry point.
Man, that's great. And then, was it a success? From your opinion, did you get everything you wanted and more?
So it was definitely an introduction. It was an introduction to the concept of Lean. It was an introduction also to LCI for me. And so both of those things I've seen kind of progress for me personally, and then just in the industry progressing over these years has just been really fun to watch and be a part of.
I think that says a lot. You hit 1989. I mean, so boom, I feel good. I'm not too old, not too young. I'm in the Goldilocks zone here. And you stayed with it for over 20 years. I mean, that says a lot about the value that you're getting out of these types of thinking and ways of working.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, for me, it was, again, so eye-opening. And we started to see it, of course, on some of the larger, more significant projects. They tended to be healthcare. And so that was certainly within my wheelhouse. Obviously, I've since learned that it does not have to be a billion-dollar hospital project to leverage these things on. We've seen some success now kind of taking that philosophy and that set of tools, that mindset, and applying it to everything from managing a book of work that includes a single client with 50 projects, of course, to leveraging it on something like what we just seen. Our most recent success, I would say, has been for a client in Roseville, Sutter Health. We just delivered a pretty major expansion for them. Full-blown IFOA, co-located team, 4 years, 80% of my time out there in the co-location. Not only leveraging what we had available to us, but also taking that and morphing it into whatever the project really needed at that point.
Oh, that's perfect. Hey, you're close, and you're close to home too, and You're their home office, man. You couldn't ask for anything more.
Yeah, that was not a bad deal.
Yeah, the North Sacramento area is it's a good unique spot. I think the hospitals in this area are probably the largest employers here. I think there's
Yeah.
three or four big health systems in this area, the North Sacramento area, and it's been interesting with the pandemic to see, the hospitals here being able to take care of some of the overflow from Sacramento itself. Have you
Hmm.
seen or heard anything? Has the pandemic changed the design of some of the things in flight?
Well, absolutely. Yeah, Felipe most definitely has turned a lot of things very introspectively, I think, for a lot of providers. I think some would say, and I've talked to other folks within the industry as well, that would have identified that there have been certain wastes within healthcare delivery from the owner's perspective for a long time, and that something like this has just really shined a white hot light on what those things are and where those opportunities for improvement are. Healthcare has been, in many people's opinion, overbuilt for some time. The idea of a very large mega hospital is really starting to get, I think, some second thought. What does telemedicine look like right now? There's, I think, we're going to see a huge surge in what telemedicine is going to be doing starting now and into the future. It makes sense from the provider standpoint. I think that culturally, I think that we're moving into kind of a situation where people are more adept and able to. I mean, look at us here, Felipe. We've been
Yeah.
in a working from home situation since, for me personally, end of March.
Oh,
It was a bit
I
of an
got you a little bit there, Dennis. I started first week of March.
okay. So as you know,
Yeah, first
having
week.
broken
Yeah,
having broken that trail, as you know. So we've become accustomed to it. I would say that it really wasn't culturally from a standpoint of how we typically deliver design and in my preferred method, which is full contact engagement, with
hmm
large groups of people and doing that. Still my preferred method and looking forward to getting back to that, but we can't ignore what we've been able to do over these last several months. And I think from the provider standpoint, our ability to help with looking at thought leadership, really leveraging research is something that HDA is doing, I would say, very well to understand from a wide perspective from the clientele that we see nationally, both academic medical centers to, critical access hospitals. The needs are going to be different, but there's certainly common threads that are running through all that. So it's been exciting, even in this current situation that we're in, to see that we have an opportunity to improve. And so certainly not the way that you would want to trigger that, but we can certainly find the opportunity, I think, within it.
yeah. I mean, the core idea that I've met a lot of lean thinkers and a lot of folks like the Glenn Ballards, the Greg Howells, and many others. Like one of my favorites, Edward Stemming,
Mm.
or as like he was known by his friends as Ed. I didn't get to call him Ed, but it would have been cool. And it's just that simple idea of things can be better. It's so fundamental. We just overlook it. Sometimes we get so into the details that we forget about that little part that we can still make it better. We can have fun at work, right, Dennis?
Absolutely. Well, I am about that, Felipe, most
Yeah.
definitely. I'd measure that in smiles per hour. Yes.
Smiles per hour is going to be my new KPI. I'm going to steal that from you, Dennis. Smiles per hour. That's a great one, man. When we met was virtually. You were on the core team in the Northern California Community Practice, which is like I think one of the largest LCI COPs. Definitely one of the oldest, if not the first or the second. Right? Is it the first or the second? I think you would know.
You know what? It's in my entry point. I know it was just really getting going, and it has grown to the point to where Northern California has actually bifurcated into a sort of a Central Valley component, headquartered in Sacramento, and a Bay Area component. I would say, from my perspective, that it is one of the COPs that is really looked to as a thriving COP, and others are certainly, we have the ability to help other emerging COPs, give them some advice. This is some of the things that we have encountered and, your ability to provide content and things like that. So it's been a privilege to be able to give back not only to your community of practice, but also help other
Yeah.
communities of practice get going.
No, it's just definitely true. Like it is the bar that we all measure ourselves to. I've got friends in the Oklahoma COP, the Florida, the New York. I myself sit on the team with St. Louis,
Hmm. Mhm.
and we steal from you guys constantly.
That's great.
Yeah, I like the thing that James led the last meeting,
Hmm.
and he called it the what do you call it? The salad talk,
Yeah, it's our salad chat. Yes.
the salad chat. Yeah, can you
Yeah.
tell people what's the salad chat at the beginning of the meeting?
So a salad chat is when we were meeting in person, we would often have a kind of a sit down dinner situation. The speaker to have the ability to really gauge sort of based on what it is they wanted to present, an open-ended leading question to the rest of the group. And the groups would get together at their table, generally 6 to 8 folks, and have a discussion about the topic that the speaker was looking to find out, taking the temperature of the room. And there would be a delegate at each table who would report out, after self-introductions, report out what our group thought about whatever this particular topic was. And it would often be really informative for the speaker to understand what the baseline of the audience was, what the general level of understanding, where maybe some of the focus wanted to be in the presentation. So, and it was also an icebreaker for the folks who may be at the table. If I would go with a group of folks from my organization, I would always encourage us to be able to spread out. I wouldn't want to see one HGA table. I'd like to see
Yeah.
someone from HGA at multiple tables and just get to know folks. And so is also a great icebreaker for the folks sitting at the table as well.
Oh, and then when you guys, you had to, we had to have an online meeting instead of face to face, which I got to attend, which was
Yes,
nice. And you still did the salad chat. That was a great example of adaptation. Like, boom, really quick.
indeed. Yeah. So Felipe, one of the things that we learned is that, and you and I are on a Zoom meeting right now, as the host, you have the ability to set out a breakout room. With just the two of us, it would be lonely because we'd be in
Yeah,
separate rooms. But
yeah, it would
um,
be.
And it's also something that we're leveraging not just in our COP meetings, but in other various components if we're engaging clients. And oftentimes we would want to have breakout groups to get some intense thinking from multiple, camps simultaneously. We would usually find different tables and corners of the room. Now I have the ability to do that virtually. So here's a great example of taking what's core about lean, a respect for people, continuous improvement, taking the tools that we already know and understand and leveraging them in another way to be able to continue to facilitate in the way that we would have, I'll call it in person, but now virtually. And so we've done it in interview prep. We've done it as part of our engagement with clients early in a design effort, where we can get still groups of people to go out and then spend a period of time, 30 minutes, an hour, what have you, and then return back to the larger group. And likewise, have report outs. We can collect collateral on a virtual whiteboard. Someone can take minutes. There's many ways that we can bring that data back to the bigger group, consolidate it, and then begin to refine things in that way as well. So leveraging technology in such a way that you can adapt the things that we used to do from a lean perspective in this new virtual environment, I think is going to be the new differentiator. And so what encourages me about our community, the lean community, is that we've already got that mindset, that we are never satisfied with what we're doing today, but we know that there's always a way that we can modify something, run it again, check it, make an adjustment, the PDCA kind of
Yeah.
loop that we would engage. And that's been so exciting to see those kinds of things happening. So that would be, the salad chat would be an example of leveraging technology to just have a simple breakout for a smaller group that I can bring back to the larger audience.
Yeah, it was a pleasant surprise because I had been to the in person, did not expect it for the virtual, and then got to make a couple friends in that little salad chat, which was nice. And coincidentally just connected with another architect. you know,
Oh, that's good.
it's good to make another friend. Yeah, as I often joke when I'm talking to project teams, like some of my best friends are actually architects. True story.
I wouldn't be ashamed to hang out with you.
Yeah, there you go. So you could tell people like you know a general contractor or two.
Oh, that's right. So, the salad chat is an example. I wanted to cite another kind of anecdotal example, Felipe, that actually has a very nice McCarthy and HGA story to it. And
Sure,
so
go ahead.
our organizations are engaged right now for an expansion and renovation for the UC Davis Health System, the Eye Center. there at the UCD campus in Sacramento. And that project began in a big room situation, design build kind of an approach, but leveraging lean tools and processes. And so we began in a big room situation, and we had to make that adjustment. So one of the things that I have to commend, your design manager, a fellow by the name of Bobby DeWeese, really bright
Oh
young
yeah.
man.
Shout out to Bobby.
Yeah, Bobby's our guy.
Nice.
So Bobby working closely with Glenn Sullivan, Sully
Yeah.
Sullivan in HGA to develop a protocol for pull planning. It was a level of rigor that the project had that they got together on a weekly basis to look back. How did we do in our previous week? Did we earn our plan percent complete or our PPC that we were targeting? And if not, more importantly, why not? And drilling down into those 5 whys to understand where the breakdowns were. And again, in the spirit of continuous improvement. So, and then of course, look forward to make any adjustments that were necessary and then plan the next horizon, basic pull planning type things. We bite off pieces that we know that we can chew. We can't forecast the weather a year from now, but I got a good sense of what's happening in the next 2 weeks. So how do we shift gears given the current situation? That was the charge that Sully and Bobby had to figure out. And so very quickly, they had identified 2 things that they had at their disposal. Something as simple as what we're doing right now, we're well familiar with it. Perhaps we need to get some kind of a FaceTime
Yeah.
situation going so that we can have an individual in a room, because we were still moving Post-it notes at that point. So, how
Sure.
do we say yes or no to commit to these things and understand what those were? And that worked for a little while. And then we figured out we didn't have enough iPhones to, make the FaceTime thing work. And so they moved the whole situation. They replicated what we had on the whiteboard into a simple spreadsheet that they were able to put together and leverage Bluebeam, something that
Wow.
most folks have. It's
Yeah.
native, it's intuitive, people know and understand it. They can open up a session in such a way that you still own your task, and you and only you can make a commitment or move that commitment after you've coordinated with anybody else who may be impacted by that. And so they set up a new paradigm using simple tools, but still had the same set of rigor that we had for go, no go, who was going to be able to move commitments, who else we needed in the room. I couldn't commit for somebody else. So all the rules still applied, but we had to change the sandbox that we were playing in. And so that was a huge win for the project. It's something that the owner reflected back. So glad we didn't throw this out. We didn't fall back into old patterns. We adapted and overcame in this situation. It's a testament to the folks who were on the project and the owner, quite frankly, for continuing to encourage this. It would be so easy, as you can imagine, in this situation, just to say, hey, listen, we're in a position where we can't just do this anymore. But they found a way, again, in that mindset, that philosophy, it's still imbued in everything that they're doing. But they found another gear. They found the ability to be able to shift that in such a way that it's still successful for them. They are still, meeting weekly. They still have a 15-minute huddle, a Scrum. You'd be
Yeah.
happy to know that
I am very happy to know that. Yeah.
that their ability to be nimble and make adjustments, not just every 7 days when the crank turns, but daily in that 15-minute huddle, they can make that adjustment. So it's a really great story, I think, about how that project and that group of folks saw an opportunity in a really unpleasant situation to not throw in the towel, but to move the ball down the field. And so it's really encouraging to hear stories like that and others where we're finding ways to make that happen.
Yeah, and I love Sully said too. One of his takeaways was that people could now read his tags because it went digital.
Yes, Sully in his left-handed handwriting,
Yeah.
God bless him. He's a wonderful individual,
Yeah.
a dear friend of mine. But
Yeah.
yeah, he can read the tags now, exactly.
Yeah. The first time that I ever saw pull planning in design was with one of your partners, was Vicky. Do you
Oh, yeah.
remember Vicky?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this was probably 4 years ago. And I got a friend of mine they were doing a job with you guys in Sacramento,
Mm-hmm.
and we actually went to your office, and they invited me just to be a fly on the wall. They're like, "You're gonna like this. You need to see this." And at that time, I had done pool planning for, half a decade, always in construction. And this was my first time seeing it with designers.
Hmm.
And when I saw Vicky was there, Ron McGlory was there. So it's like the two, Ron McGlory is like the guy. For people that don't know, he's like lean royalty, and he's a structural engineer, right? So there you go. Another non-construction person, but a designer.
Hmm.
I'm an electrical engineer by training. So, I mean,
Hmm.
near and dear to my heart is any type of engineering folk, any building people.
Hmm.
And to watch Vicky and Ron negotiate with each other for what they were going to do and how they were going to hand off, it completely changed my approach to pool planning.
Hmm.
100% got better. And I even got yelled at by one of my people for talking too much in the back because we were distracting the pool plan. I was just getting so excited and giddy. I was talking to my friend who invited me there, and we couldn't. I kept asking all these like things like, "How does Vicky know that her team can do that?" And then, like little things like that. And it was just really cool. They actually slowed down and educated me.
Oh.
Yeah, and it's totally helped. I think now I'm about 50-50 working with construction teams that are already in flight and then working with teams that are still in the design. It's about half now,
Hmm.
which is really cool. And I owe, Vicky and Ron a ton for being so patient with me so many years ago
Hmm.
and just teaching. And Ron has told people too, and as did Vicky at the time before she retired, that just ask questions. Like that's one of the coolest things. Like, you're talking about Bobby and Sully getting together and just working with the client. I remember, I think Samara was just asking, how can we keep doing this?
Hmm.
Right. And the team, you know, they responded to the call, and
Hmm.
that's going to be a great story. I mean, there are a lot of great stories happening despite all the challenges we're dealing with COVID. And
Hmm.
I remember we have a large healthcare client that's in California. You probably work for them as well at times, and they said that some of the people in their organization thought when the pandemic hit, this would probably be like March April time period 2020. How can we keep doing lean? Like they were thinking, like, how can we? And I said, why don't you just ask the people that work for you? And that turned out to be a 2 hour long meeting where 15 different companies presented on how they've pivoted during COVID, and it was exactly like you said. People just got together, collaborated, honored that respect for people, answered the call, and using very simple tools that they already had. Nobody had to spend an extra dollar
Yes.
to make it happen. And the client was left speechless. And they said that we're taking this back inside and we're going to share this with our people as like a conversation starter.
Hmm.
And that's had like so many positive side effects since. Do
Hmm.
you find that does your phone ring? I mean, besides me calling you and asking for stuff, what kind of calls do you get, like asks for help related to lean or just more together type of practices?
Well, that's interesting because no one has really specifically made the call. I would say that most of what we're hearing right now is from our clients looking for thought leadership about how you're addressing things right now in the kind of near 6 month term and then sort of long term. It's really been uh, nice for us to be able to maybe help spearhead some of those things. And so, as you mentioned, Felipe, we all had to make the adjustment. When HGA, for example, we went from 11 offices to, over 800 offices overnight as
Well,
everybody started working from home. And so, with that, we all just had to, get to the point to where we had to quickly adapt to this, and move on. And it wasn't just with, our clients, and we're still talking to our clients about,
sure.
their needs and how things can keep going for them. But we just continue to behave in such a way, and we invite others to come along. There are certainly some clients who are, I'll say, more sophisticated in that regard, Felipe, that have always been of that mind and are certainly supporting and encouraging the continued development of how we're doing things now virtually from a lean perspective. But perhaps what's been more encouraging is Other clientele who may have been curious but never really engaged in it are even more so now. I
Yeah.
mean, and there's a much more compelling reason. And what's terrific is there's this long, as you pointed out earlier, there's great stories and there's a long history of things that have been successful and are continuing to develop using simple tools, but are adhering to the philosophy and the practice. And so that, in my opinion, is probably the bigger opportunity at this moment is to engage with clients who may not have historically had interest in or have only been curious about, but now are kind of looking in and seeing that as other things are continuing to move forward with success, how can they replicate that success right now?
Yeah. I know. I remember like early in the pandemic, it's like every other thing in my LinkedIn feed was about a COVID webinar. For a while, and they're still. I mean, they're still happening now. It's already August, and
Hmm.
we're still seeing quite a bit of that from some of the larger nonprofits now. It's like all the little consultants got there first, and now the big nonprofits are on the end of the tail, right? As we move into the fall,
Hmm.
and a lot of conferences got postponed or went virtual.
Hmm.
That's been interesting to see. So that's good
Hmm.
that you're still engaging the clients at a very high level, and we are always happy that you're still designing and drawing because that means there'll be work for us in the future, right?
Yes, right, right.
Right. That's good to hear. But do
Hmm.
you get any calls like from your people inside your company, like they recognize, oh, like Dennis is on this lean construction group. What kind of questions do you get from newer people or just people that don't know what lean is? Because there are many people out there still, right, Dennis, that don't know what lean thinking is.
There's a few, if you can imagine. Yes, there are a few, and I would say that yes, there have been those kinds of calls. So from an internal perspective, in Sacramento, and specifically within healthcare, we developed a lean process for our staffing coordination. And so this is our internal staffing coordination from the project management to the project architect to the production support folks and how we leverage folks in an efficient way across multiple principles and across multiple projects. And we called it our staffing stand up. It was a 15-minute huddle.
Mm-hmm.
We had two boards that we established because we would look at this week and we would look at next week. And so again, our meeting on Monday morning would begin with how did we do last week? Did we learn anything? We always try to apply learning that occurred. And then that makes us change this coming week. And then, of course, we forecast the second week as well. So we had a process that we would get together, stand up meeting, everybody standing in front of these two boards, and we would run through what are staffing requirements for. We would have a monitor up, that we would reference for our backlog that would take us, forecasting 6 or 8 months out. So we see the long view, and then we see that short view. And so it's very much like how we would facilitate a poll planning where we understand the big picture aggregate overall schedule. We understand the various design elements or construction elements, and then we look at that fine detail, kind of as Romano would describe sort of the boulders, the cobble, and the pebbles, that
Yeah.
level of detail. Well, no one wants to or is coming back into the office anymore. And so I offered to, do the FaceTime thing, but that
Sure.
wasn't really as efficient. And so we moved that process into something that was virtual and electronic. So similar to how we're meeting right now, a Zoom
Yeah.
meeting, still 15 minutes, still involves the same points of discussion. But now I have something that I can take to my peers in other offices and even internally how we support other market sectors. We have folks that are cross-trained to work on a museum or a fine arts center that can also do a medical office building or a hospital addition. And so we've got people that can play both sides of the coin. And so we can share staff and buoy other markets that may have, you know, um, different looks at what their backlog might be, where healthcare is continuing to, for the most part, be strong. Others might be, not doing as well. And so we have that ability to do that.
Yeah.
So those are the kinds of calls. I'm sorry to interrupt, Felipe. That we've been getting to talk about. Dennis, how have you been managing your staffing when everyone is spread out now and working from home? How do you keep an understanding about where folks are at, where the gaps might be, where people might be overburdened, and so we can level out their workload?
Yeah, that's perfect. That's where I was going to take you. Like, bring me back home to how how you're helping, because I know you're a helper. Because I called on you and asked for help, and you didn't even think about it. You were like an instant yes. So that's great to see. Our office here in the Roseville office, McCarthy's office, some similar type of thing where they made the flip. Somebody on the staff volunteered to make it digital, and then they've continued to check in, and now there's a large contingent of people back in the office, so it's gone back inside,
Hmm.
but there's still people calling in remote.
Hmm.
Yeah, but that's really cool.
Hmm.
Do you get any like visitors from outside of California ever coming in to do some cross-functional things with your office locally? And then hearing, do you see a difference between, you said you had 11 offices. Is there a cultural difference among the different offices, versus like here?
Well, there certainly is geographic differences, and market differences depending on where you're at in the country. But what's really cool and unique about HGA is that we have the ability, because we work with so many other really bright folks in other parts of the country, that we can engage together and collaborate together on projects no matter where we are. It's a habit that we would have had, I'll call it pre-COVID, where I may fly to, somewhere in the Midwest to help, be part of the preliminary coaching of a project team that might be integrating on an IPD project for their first time. And so sharing some of those experiences, or perhaps called into, in California, one of the things that HGA does is in healthcare in all of our offices. So we definitely have some similar stories. We have some similar challenges, whether it's related to OSHPOT or a common client that we all share. So yes, it would run both gamuts where I might engage some programming thought leadership that I might have in the Midwest on a project here in California, or vice versa. I might come and help facilitate pull planning, for example, on a project team that allows their folks to wear the hats that they need to in their roles on the project. I can come in and help be a facilitator for some of those processes as well. I can tell you that right now I'm engaging with some folks from the Midwest on a pursuit that we're engaged in, and we meet virtually, running through, for example, our pursuit rationale. Once again, leveraging what we have in Zoom to do breakout meetings. I'm talking about leadership in a big room. We've got folks in the Midwest who are talking about design and how we engage our clients, and how we go through our extreme scheme process or our 3P process to um, how do we, if we can't be there together and build an entire room in cardboard, how are we leveraging virtual reality in this time right now to be able to share with you our design thoughts? And we might be in Milwaukee, we might be in Minneapolis, but we can share with our client here in Sacramento with the headset. Here's how you can experience this kind of spatially by using the VR. And so it's very exciting to see how those kinds of things are happening right now as well. And so, yes, we do get the call. We do share that kind of information. Our ability to work with anybody at any time is just being conscious of the time zone these days.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I've been up since 4 a.m. today, working with some folks on the East Coast.
So, you know.
Oh yeah, I know, man. That's why I have the blackout curtains in the room. So I just get into the time zone. There was a day this week, Dennis, where I was convinced that I was in Central Standard Time all day. When I came out of my room, I was like, "What's for dinner?" And my family's
Yeah.
like, "It's too early." Yeah. All right. What's your dog's name?
So this is Max, everybody. This is,
Max.
this is Max.
What's up,
Maxwell J.
Max?
Dog. Yes.
Maxwell J. Dog. Yeah.
Yeah.
Full name with a middle name.
Oh, yeah. Well, he gets to hear it from time to time, but yeah, he's the big one of the group. We got a small, a medium, and a large, and so I'm out in their in their space right now here this morning.
Yeah.
So
That's awesome.
yeah.
We've got another cool thing that I love about your firm. I practice, like, it's no secret that I practice Scrum. You could probably see a couple Scrum books over my shoulder on my bookcase, and Jeff Sutherland knows he's one of my mentors. And when I was first getting into it, I bumped into somebody from your office, and they had me come and talk. We did a lunch and learn at your Santa Monica office before you moved to the new one.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember, like, I died and went to heaven. I was in a room with 45 people, excited to designers excited to learn about Scrum. Some of them had already been doing it for a couple of years,
Hmm.
like myself, like just guerrilla Scrum, like quietly, and then it became bigger, and to talk about it, and now I bump into people. And you just mentioned today that team is doing some Scrum things
Hmm.
on that team here in the Sacramento area. What have you seen, like, from your purview? How long ago was it when Scrum came on the horizon and became like a word?
Mm. Well, I'll share my experience. And so for me personally, Felipe, I started to become, uh, hearing about it. This is still sort of early on in my engagement with Lean as it related to my entry point was through LCI. And so we started to hear terms like Agile. We started to hear terms like Scrum. We started to hear things like Six Sigma and things like that. And so I see this, I guess, as, tactics and tools that you can apply to the various aspects of your project or your life, whatever it is that you need to kind of manage and move forward. And so Scrum I see is coming up more and more. And so it's certainly starting to really pop up on my radar. I would say over the last 18 months or so. I would have to be, I'd have to be transparent and admit I don't have a deep understanding of it. And so I'm looking forward to your upcoming webinars on that topic.
Yeah,
A little
no
commercial for you.
worries. No, I mean, we one of the cool things about in my job is that I get to help people and engage with those that want to get after it, and like that's just something that we can connect on anytime, Dennis. Like,
Okay.
there is no cost for to have me invite me to something to talk about Scrum. We've onboarded thousands of people in the design community to the Scrum framework, so take advantage of me, man.
I will. I
Yeah,
will, Felipe, and thank you.
yeah. Absolutely. But yeah, no, I'm glad, like, in the 18 months, like, I was talking to JJ Sutherland this morning. He's the
Hmm.
CEO at Scrum Inc. now. Like, the most famous of all Scrum organizations, I always tell them, like, kudos. It helps that the co-creator started the company. And he was saying, like, it's just been so interesting in the last 6 months, like almost exactly at the time that, the pandemic hit, there has been an exponential demand for Scrum in the design and construction community. And I said, yeah, because it just makes pivoting and being more adaptive to changes so easy. And groups that were already doing it, like we have a team in our office that was already doing it. When the pandemic hit and we had to go home, they didn't miss a beat. We
Hmm.
saw their productivity actually go up, and it stayed up. So that was it was interesting. And I've heard the same, like we were talking about some other companies, and they were having some similar stories. Some of the startups in Silicon Valley, they were already agile, and some that were using Scrum, like nothing changed, other
Hmm.
than people got to have a cozier working environment. Or, some people had to give up because there are some startups that have some really cool amenities in the office that they couldn't use anymore.
Hmm.
But yeah, is there anything else, Dennis, that you want to talk about related to the pandemic and lean that we didn't hit on yet?
Yeah, well, I would just reiterate as we have discussed, and I think your last story is a great example of that. Is sometimes we talk about it, in as lean as a mindset change. That there's often some kind of a compelling reason. We sometimes describe it as a burning platform, and so I couldn't imagine a more eminent or overwhelming reason to begin to consider or look at these kinds of things as we are in now. And you talked about moving out of the situation that you knew, that you understood well, and suddenly being forced into something else. And so it wasn't even a, hey, I'm thinking about it, I'd like to learn more, I'd like to get into it. It's like a really kind of a hard shove in a direction.
Yeah.
And so I would say that now is this tremendous opportunity for folks like you and I and others that are in the Scrum or the Lean community to be champions. Just continue to do what we're doing. Continue to talk about and evangelize, the core principles about respect for people, continuous improvement, things that you can do right now, small things. This is back to a 2-second lean kind of a component where, small changes even though, I think again, the request has been large, but you can
Yeah.
begin in small ways to begin to move things in a direction. I agree with you that people who have been understanding and involved in this for some time are going to have a much more natural sort of a transition into some of this. But it doesn't surprise me that the call has been more overwhelming now. And I'd say another example would be, and we hosted at HGA, our offices in Midtown, our typical COP meetings that we would have monthly. And I would say that on a good day, we would have, maybe 25 or 30 people for Sacramento would be a good number that we would
Sure.
expect to show up in person. We held our first virtual seminar that you and I connected at. It was with regard to the pull planning in a virtual environment. We had over 100 people had requested to
Wow.
come to this. 80% of those folks actually attended. And it ran the gamut from owners to contractors to, our trade partnership to designers and others. And they weren't just solely local to Northern California. We saw people that attended from around the United States.
Wow.
And so it's clear to me that there's a great deal of interest in this right now. That there's a significant opportunity for champions and practitioners to continue what we had been doing in an in-person kind of a situation and open up that thinking to continuous improvement, to leverage what we have at our disposal, to continue to do these things and perhaps improve on them. Felipe, I think that our work from home situation is going to stick around in some form or fashion. And that's going to compel us to continue to find creative ways to connect as you and I are right now and in other ways, to continue to do the things that we desire to do on our projects that I think more clients are going to be looking for on these things. Lean for a couple of years for me personally has no longer become a differentiator. It's just the rigor. It's just what we do. It's how we practice. And now we've got this opportunity to take that and further it, to just further it into what we're doing virtually right now. So I think we've got a bit of a blue ocean opportunity to continue to take these things and improve on them, find other unique ways to continue to do those. So it's exciting. I keep saying this, I hear myself saying,
Yeah.
the situation that we're in is an exciting time. It sounds a little counterintuitive, but it truly, you find opportunity in these kinds of situations, and leveraging that to the greatest extent is, I think, incumbent on us to do right now to continue to lead the industry in that direction.
No, I feel exactly the same way. Like we'd had I don't have as much experience with lean as you do, so I'm definitely still learning from you, and I appreciate you sharing your thoughts and practices with me. So thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm.
But about a decade ago, I got involved, and it was somebody that had some manufacturing experience come to work for us, and like they said the right things and hit me at exactly the right time where I got interested and stayed with it. And then now we've got some of the calls we've had have been like the younger people coming into the workforce now and saying like, we heard about this in school. And I'm just thinking, wow, I never heard about this in school. Like I worked a decade and never heard a peep, right? And you worked decades and never heard about Scrum until 18 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have not done a good job of marketing, you know. And then people to be excited and say, I see that you do this thing, lean. What is that? And just to have people asking with real curiosity, what it is.
Yeah.
I think that says a lot about just the shifting workforce too. And this is something like you said, it's no longer going to be a differentiator. You have to do it or you're not going to be here tomorrow.
Absolutely. Well, and you make a very good point too. And I'm encouraged to know that academia is really starting to engage in such a way where they recognize that this is legitimate. It's a thing, the idea of design, bid, build, transitioning into something more friendly and something that quite frankly engages much more positive outcomes, and so I can tell you, not just anecdotally, but, empirically, that I've been on projects that you couldn't wait to be over. And it was, there've been those sort of negative experiences. We just finished up and still wrapping up some of the renovation scopes there at the Roseville project. And hearts are breaking that we're having to now go out and find and do other things. And it may not be in the same form and fashion
Yeah.
that we have been doing it over the last 4 years. And that's telling that you've really made the impression that you've done something that's of a benefit, that people want more, obviously. generationally, again, the folks that are coming out of construction management now and into that sort of mindset, and they're native to it. They don't understand sort of what you and I and others have been
Yeah.
through, that have had to kind of break this trail that they're just walking on now. And so there's that. The most compelling stories I've ever heard at the LCI meetings were the salty old, superintendent, 40 years in their career, really hard nosed, things got done at the end of their boot, and they've been exposed to this. They were resistant, of course. Reluctantly, they carried on. They began to discover the benefit, and they'll stand up in front of a room and say, you know what, I'll never do this any other way. And
Yeah.
so when you begin to sort of get both of those kind of ends of the spectrum in the workforce, either native to it, wouldn't do it, don't know any other way, or have seen a lot, have seen the benefit of performing in sort of a lean and integrated fashion, and wouldn't go back to doing it another way. That really tells you that this is something that has merit and deserves our continued focus and attention on it.
No, it absolutely does. I've actually known quite a few people that were on an integrated project delivery job in different parts of the country. And when that job came to an end, their next assignment was a traditional design bid build. They quit. They
Yeah.
actually quit the company and went to go work for, different organizations that had more of those IPD jobs in the portfolio just to get another at bat because they can't go backwards. And then I know another team too that they'd come off of two back to back. Just coincidentally, Architect and the GC had some back to back experiences on IPD, and they were on a traditional job, and they talked the owner into behaving as if it was IPD without the contract, and the owner bought in. And they even gave the general contractor tens of thousands of dollars to create a big room, and they've been reaping the benefits. It's become like a lighthouse to the rest of that. They're a serial builder, just coincidentally happens to be a healthcare client,
Hmm.
a serial builder. So they're constantly doing capital programs all the time. And now they're bringing their project managers to this office environment, this job site, to see like what's possible without the contract.
Hmm.
And to me, that's just like, it's unheard of. That's like, there should be a book written about that, Dennis, you know?
There you go.
Yeah. it's, it's unbelievable. And just look at in a couple of stories that you and I are sharing, architects and general contractors partnering together. I
Hmm.
remember being at the DBIA conference in Napa. I think it was a year ago. They hosted it in Napa. And I saw something that I had never seen before and that I didn't think I'd ever see. And
Hmm.
that was at the happy hours. I saw architects doing business development like things to general contractors, like wooing us. And I remember I think I collected like 25 business cards from architects, and I just felt so special.
Oh, that's awesome.
You guys made me feel so good. So many of your friends, Dennis.
Yes, yes. Well, Felipe, here again is just, if we think back over the sort of the history of our respective, trades and what we do for work, there's historically been silos and divisions, and we were taught almost to be having this adversarial relationship, right?
Yeah.
Our job was to, fight off the change orders and things like that, and we were
Yep.
set up contractually in a way to sort of be at odds against each other. And so, kind of being young in my career and maybe just, sort of a Pollyanna attitude about the whole thing, but I'm a pretty affable dude. I like to get along with people. I never had any interest in kind of engaging
Yeah.
in an adversarial way, with whom I saw as my partners on this project. And it was really when you had that connection point that wasn't at the permit, but you had that connection point that was, really at my hip as we were
Yeah.
going through the design process, because I am not too proud to admit that folks in the trades have forgotten more than I might ever know about a particular connection, or what's the best way to think about this thing to gain efficiency in the construction and increase safety, reliability, and expedite things. And so I've learned so much, I would say, in the last 10 years of my career, engaging on projects in this way, than maybe all of my time before that, because
Oh,
of the opportunities that I've had to engage. I mean, I can sit here and read about a system, or I can talk to a guy that has actually handled it and knows and really understands all the ins and outs of that system. And I'd rather do that. And part of that is just because I tend to be more relational anyway. And so when we talk about the contract and how that can either be an enabler or an inhibitor to how you want to conduct yourself in such a way, when people turn to the contract, it's often to find out how I'm going to whack somebody with something, or what's the penalty for something. And so when we take the contract and I think that what Panos did at CPMC, when he took the contract and he put it under glass and he set it out there for everybody to look at, and they never opened it. They never had to go to that, because there's just behaviors that are so akin to how you just want to behave as a human being anyway. Just, I don't know, intuitively, it just makes so much sense to me that this is a relational way to conduct business and not a transactional way to conduct business. And the support structure, whether you have it contractually or not, but that you can just behave. And that goes back to the point I made earlier about, I'm going to approach everything that I do in work in such a way, and whether the contract supports it is irrespective of how I'm going to approach it. And I'm engaging with new owners, and my new role as a principal and as the practice group leader at HGA, I've done much more of that than I ever have in my career in the last year and a half. If I'm engaging with you for the first time, you're an owner on a new project with me, I'm going to behave as such a way, and this is just the way that I do it. And I'm hoping that you're going to find something in here that you want to carry forward in your next project. And we'll continue to have those types of discussions. And so I think that we, as leaders, that we as people who are, in the forefront and working with each other to move these things forward, have a responsibility to sort of lead by example in such a way on projects. And Felipe, when you walk into a room, it just lights up because you've got this energy, and that you're going to bring that to everything that you're doing. Likewise, I want to have that same effect, that when you engage either with your staff inside your organization and the things that you can do to manage yourself or your business in a lean way, in person or virtually, how you engage on projects, you're going to engage in such a way. Everything we do, I hope that at the end of the day, that I can look back and maybe I'll be proud of some of the buildings that I've been involved in, but I think I'm going to look back more fondly on the engagements that we had, the friends that we made along the way.
Smiles per hour.
The smiles per hour, precisely. That's the metric I'm going to use.
Yeah. No, Dennis, I'm gonna go back and tally the smiles per hour just in this call. Like, I think it's I think we're like over 700.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah. But it's like, that is exactly what it is. And you touched on something, a couple things, and I don't know if you're aware of it or not, but what you hit on when you talked about the relational part, the people part, and then you talked about like what Panos did, putting the contract under glass. People and interactions are more important than the processes. And there's relational things that you want to do. That, Dennis, is agile. That is the core of the Agile Manifesto. And what people that are trying to be more adaptive have figured out and been trying to practice for decades. That's the magic. So you're just lucky that you have that good disposition. One way they went to call your parents and tell them they did a good job with you.
Well, they'd be so happy to know.
Yeah. But that's amazing to hear, that approach. And I think that does make a big difference. I remember being on a job, and it was a traditional delivery. And I asked the architect, I said, listen, I know we have this traditional contract and you're working directly for the owner, and the client was in the room. I said, just tell me what things that you drew on the building so that I want to make sure I exercise care and the RFIs that I write, because I don't want you to be offended. I'm not picking on you, or it's if something in the design is lacking and I can't make the connections, with the tradespeople, I'm going to need your help. And the architect ended up telling me a story. And they didn't answer the question, by the way. I didn't find out what they drew until the end of the job.
Oh, bummer.
Yeah. And, but they told me that and this was a person who was probably 20 years in the business. And they said they learned in school from their architecture professors, you are the last hope the last stop to protect the client from those thieving general contractors and contractors. And it's your responsibility to keep the owner safe. And this person took it to heart. And I was like, wow, we've come a long way from that to what we're talking about today. And I'm glad we're moving away from that.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes you want to ask the question, who did this to you, right? I mean, there's an experience that was had that jaded your perception of that. That's a shame.
It is. But no, it's I'm looking at the time, Dennis, and we gotta put a bow in this bad boy, and that just means that we had to have a second conversation at some point in the future. That's all.
I'd enjoy that. Yeah. Please feel free.
Yeah. But no, it's been great having you on the show, man. I really appreciate it. I know you're going to inspire a lot of people to pick up that new KPI, smiles per hour.
Outstanding. Well, Felipe, thank you again for the opportunity. It's been a pleasure speaking with you this morning.
Likewise. Have a good day, Dennis.
Thanks. You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Very special thanks to my guest. I'm Felipe Engineer Manriquez. The EBFC show is created by Felipe and produced by a passion to build easier and better. Thanks for listening. Stay safe, everybody. Let's go build.